We tend to think of psychiatric medication as a pretty simple fix, right? There's a chemical imbalance, you take a pill, and, well, problem solved. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the reality is way more complex and, honestly, a lot more fascinating? Let's peel back the layers and see what's really going on under the hood. I mean, really, have you ever stopped to think about it? That little pill goes on this incredible, complex journey through your body before it can even start to do its job. It's not just some magic bullet. It's a pretty amazing biological process. And look, this is the starting point for so many of us. It's this idea that, okay, mental health disorders are mainly a brain chemistry thing, so a chemical solution, a medication, seems like the most direct, most effective approach. But as we're about to find out, that's just one piece of a much, much bigger puzzle. So let's pull back the curtain. If we really want to understand how these medications work, we have to follow their journey, from the second they're taken to the moment they actually create an effect. And it all really boils down to two big scientific ideas. Okay, so the first one is a mouthful: pharmacokinetics. It sounds super complicated, I know, but it's really just the story of the drug's travel plans. Think of it as how your body handles the drug, how it absorbs it, moves it around, breaks it down, and then eventually gets rid of it. Let's make this way simpler. Just think about your daily commute to work. First, there's absorption. That's you leaving your house. Then, distribution. That's you following the GPS, the drug traveling through your bloodstream to the brain. Next is metabolism, which is kind of like your body taking a lunch break to process and break down the drug. And finally, elimination. That's the drive home, as your body clears it all out. See? Simple, right? Okay, so if pharmacokinetics is the journey to work, then pharmacodynamics is what happens once the drug actually clocks in. This is all about what the drug does to your body. What's its job once it reaches its destination in the brain? How does it actually make a change? To get our heads around this, let's try another analogy. I want you to picture the drug as a visitor arriving at a house. And that house? That's one of your brain cells. Now, to get the house's attention, the visitor has to use the doorbell. So this gets us to a really cool idea that scientists call the functional selectivity hypothesis. The drug molecule comes along and presses the doorbell. That's a receptor on the outside of the cell. Then something called a G protein acts like the internal wiring, carrying that signal from the doorbell to the inside of the house. For a lot of these meds, that signal tells the cell to change the balance of neurotransmitters, chemicals like serotonin or dopamine. The whole point is to fine-tune the communication channels between brain cells that might not be working right. That's the drug, doing its job on a microscopic level. Okay, so here's the big takeaway, the thing to remember. Pharmacokinetics is the journey, and pharmacodynamics is the work. Your body has to get the drug to the right place, and then the drug has to do the right thing once it gets there. You absolutely need both for the medication to have any effect at all. And here's why all this science stuff really matters. Everybody's body handles that journey differently. The speed of absorption, how fast that drug gets into your system, can have huge, huge consequences. A faster absorption usually means a more intense effect, which, you guessed it, carries a much higher risk of addiction. So the process, the journey itself, is just as important as the drug. Okay, so we've got the science down, but now let's talk about the human side of the story. Because once we look past the chemistry, we run into a whole tangled web of really personal and ethical questions. This isn't just about cells and receptors anymore. This is about people's lives and their identities. And this is the question that sits right at the heart of the experience for so many people. If a pill changes how you feel, how you react, maybe even parts of your personality, where do you end and the drug begin? It's a really profound and honestly a pretty unsettling question to have to ask yourself. And that one question opens up this whole ethical maze. For instance, what's the line between treatment and just enhancement? Are we just trying to get back to a baseline, or are we trying to become better than well? Then you have to ask, is medication really the best option, or is it just the cheapest and easiest one to get? That brings up tough questions about who has access to what kind of care. And really, at the end of the day, who's in the driver's seat of someone's recovery? Is it the patient, the doctor, or the drug itself? And that question of control becomes chillingly real when you realize just how misleading that whole simple pill idea can be. Let's get real for a second and talk about an antidepressant overdose. After the pills are taken, it can take up to an hour for the drug to be fully absorbed and active in the body. That hour is an incredibly critical, dangerous window. It's a stark reminder that these are powerful substances, not some kind of instant, simple fix. So, with all that said, where does this leave us? Well, it pushes us to look beyond just the prescription pad and toward a much more complete, more holistic way of thinking about what it actually means to heal. Here's a really powerful way to reframe it. Maybe the medication isn't the whole solution by itself, but what it can do, and what it does for many, is provide stability. It can build a solid floor for someone who feels like they've been in a total freefall, creating just enough safety to start the work of rebuilding. And this is where it all comes together beautifully. The medication can address the biological side of things. It builds that floor. But psychotherapy, that's what allows a person to work on the psychological and social stuff. That's how you learn to climb the stairs. So you could say the most ethical way to use medication is to restore a person's agency, just enough so they can fully show up and participate in their own therapy and in their own life. Which brings us to our final and maybe most important question. If the goal is this combined approach, tackling the biology, the psychology, and empowering the person, does medication have to be part of the equation for someone to get better? Well, the answer, just like the drug's journey itself, is anything but simple.